When it comes to fantasy, there is nothing greater than The Lord of the Rings. With its epic storytelling, its incredible scenery and world building, and in the case of this video, its complex, beautiful characters. And a lot of that credit has to go to the grandfather of modern fantasy itself, and that is John Ronald Reuel Tolkien. But all kidding aside, some of the credit does go for these movies to Peter Jackson and his team. And today I want to talk about The Fellowship of the Ring and how it perfectly sets up each member of the Fellowship. I'm going to try to keep it simple and do one scene per character. Some characters were going to be combined into scenes. Let's jump in with our first member, Frodo. Frodo is introduced the Quiet of the Shire. He's introduced, reading a book, you meet the curious Frodo, the calm, collected Frodo. You get this sense of this more calm, introverted man who is willing to take adventures, like his uncle, who's willing to take risks, who's willing to do what's necessary to get the job done, but is still just a curious hobbit. In the book, he's a lot older. In the movie, he's barely just an adult, just like his friends. And he's the one who takes on this mission the most. But you get this scene in his opening scene, him just running over and meeting Gandalf, which is our next character, and having him just ask questions, just a curious hobbit, a joyful hobbit, a curious hobbit. You also, in that same moment, you have it when Bilbo is talking to Gandalf, and he says that if he asks, Frodo would follow him to the ends of the earth. He is ready for an adventure his uncle wants him to go on. Next, Gandalf. Gandalf is also introduced in the same scene. For the most part, you just meet this wise man who's willing to kneel down, greet his friend Bilbo. Has so much secrets, but also willing to answer things to Frodo. Something deeper going on with him, and that's something that the Lord of the Rings always has with Gandalf. Is deeper than the characters realize, and there's more going on behind him. But you get the opening scene of Gandalf was just him, calm and collected, throwing off some fireworks for these kids. Just being joyful, being happy, being a Santa-like figure, but also having that deep wisdom you can tell behind his eyes. Next one we'll talk about is Sam. There's multiple scenes you could say are Sam's big moments, when he's caught eavesdropping on Frodo and Gandalf's conversation. But really, the one I'm going to focus on is that of the moment at the party, and you see the friend who's always there for Frodo, always willing to be by his side. We also see Rosie Cotton and how he's too terrified to go ask for the dance. And she's more than willing to dance anything. But it's like, you see Sam the Brave before he was brave. And it sets up this beautiful character arc that's coming later, where he's, runs right into Mordor to save Frodo. He's the most brave a brave could be. But he started out as just too cowardly to go, like the whole joke of, they go all the way to Mordor just to learn to ask her out. That is Sam. There's gonna be a video just about Sam sometime, but right now, that is Sam. In his opening moments of meeting him at that party, you meet the loyal Sam, who's too scared to go ask a girl. That's one is man-hitting. I'm gonna combine them into one thing because they kind of go as a pair, but you get to see a little bit of the differences between them in the scene. And that is the scene also at the party. You meet them as they steal fireworks and they'll set them off. And you see the little hints that the Merry is definitely the leader, while Pippin is more of the clumsy idiot who would, later on, drop a skeleton down a well, causing Gandalf to die. But you get to see that a little bit here, where it's just, okay, you get to meet them troublemakers. They have these deep layers to them, but they're just two troublemakers. That's where you follow them throughout the movie, and you get to see them grow over time. All these characters, that's the big thing about them. They all have their character arcs to breathe. But we meet our next character, Strider, or Aragorn. His introduction is also super interesting because of how you meet him as this mysterious figure, this Strider, who just staring at them. While in the book, you get a lot more context. And I'm sorry I'll keep trying to bring the book into this. It's just, I love that book. It's my favorite book. And the more I think about this movie, the more I realize there was so much stuff that would have been better if it was like the book. But in the same way, back onto the movie. In the movie, you have it so Frodo, on accident, puts on the ring. You see Aragorn immediately take into authority. Let's make sure that you're okay. Let's figure out what we're doing here. He takes charge. You see the leader there. You see Aragorn as this ranger, but you also see this caring guy who, you see him as they're asking, who are those? Who are the Nazguls? And he explains in a very calm way what's going on with them. In later scenes, you see more of him, singing songs. You see a little more of the Aragorn side to him, but you get to meet the ranger, but also having these hints that there's someone deeper in there. Now we jump forward to the Council of Elrond, where we meet our last 3 characters. Starting with Legolas. Legolas, we meet as just a normal elf, but we see that little bit of that tension between him and the dwarves, and how he's not the biggest fan of dwarves, and how he is an intelligent elf who knows about a bunch of stuff. Wow, he would never have been the one to say, this is Aragorn, son of Payoff, and all that stuff. But in the same way, that is Legolas in the movie. He is an intelligent elf who has more going on in his head than meets the eye. But you can tell it's there. He's skilled with his bow. He's a warrior elf. They have those hints there that's really shining up this deeper character throughout the rest of the series, and how he interacts with Gimli, our next character. Gimli is almost in the same case. You see really his hatred towards elves, and how he looks down on elves, how he's full of himself, and how he's a dwarf, and how dwarfs are better, and all that good stuff. But you also see the fearlessness. They're like, oh, we need to destroy the ring. What does he do immediately? He's like, okay, let me do it. And he tries to destroy the ring. That is Gimli. Set up very clearly from the beginning. Gimli is fearless. Hey, you need me to destroy the ring? I'll destroy the ring. Like, boom, no problem. Should it be in the hands of an elf? No, I should deal with it. I'll deal with it. I'll take my axe, I'll chop it. Boom, good. Doesn't work that way. But in the same way, that's Gimli. That's how he works. And the last character, and honestly one of my favorite members of the Fellowship, is Boromir. A character that honestly looks down on a lot. I try to explain to my mom sometimes how she really doesn't understand Boromir. Boromir is one of my favorite characters because he's flawed. Out of all of them, he's the most flawed. He's one of the greatest characters. His death scene is incredible. And the scene we're going to talk about is, of course, the one at the council. The son of the steward of Gondor. He's the protector of Gondor. You see, he's tempted to take the ring. Why? Because he wants to protect his people. He's coming from a good place. And that's something that a lot of people misunderstand about Tolkien, is he is not black and white. Boromir is a perfect example of a character who really wanted the ring for good purposes. Just like how Gandalf says earlier about how, do not tempt me. Do not give me the ring. I would try to use it for good and will use it for evil instead. That is what Boromir's problem is. He fails in the end, but he is a flawed character who from the very beginning you could tell those cracks in him of just wanting to protect his people. And that's what he tries to do by taking the ring in the end. What can we learn from this? If you try to break the Lord of the Rings down into a 3-act structure, I would say the first act is up until the end of the council. The second act is up until Gandalf's death. And the third act is that of after Gandalf's death at the end of the movie. In this way, it fits into your first act. You just set up all 7 characters in a way that really makes them unique, right? As I said, Merry and Pippin, somewhat that they all lumped into a group. But if you really pay attention to what's going on in that scene, you set up them as individual characters too. You don't just set them up as a group. You set them up as Merry's the clear leader. Pippin is the clear clumsy one. They're both clumsy. They're both troublemakers, but one is clearly the leader of the two, and the other one is clearly the one who's going to get into the most mischief from just doing stupid things. You get to meet the calmness that is Frodo, his curiosity, his willing to travel if need be. And of course, in later scenes, you have more of that. You get to meet the humble, kind Gandalf. You get to meet the leader of a man that is Aragorn. You get to meet the few of the elves and the dwarves, but you also get to meet this elf and this dwarf in their own separate ways. And then you get to meet the complex, the flawed man, that how he truly is a noble, brave man who wants to save his people. On a side note, there's a great video that I recommend you guys go find and watch. I'll probably link in the description, where it talks about how Boromir and Ned Stark are actually almost the same character, even though people think they're the exact opposite. It's a great video. But in the same way, Boromir is a noble man. A lot of people misunderstand that. He is a noble man, and you see that in that scene. You see it for the rest of the movie. What we see is in your first act, that's how you perfectly set up these characters. Giving them scenes together, you set them out one at a time, but you have them build on each other, right? Unlike with some things where you just set up all these individual characters by themselves and then have them later meet up, which works sometimes, like in Game of Thrones. But for the most part, having these characters introduced from one, right? You introduce Frodo, and that through Frodo you introduce Gandalf. Through Frodo you introduce Sam. Through those 3 at that party, that's where you meet Merry and Pippin. Through the 4 hobbits, that's where you meet Aragorn. Through Gandalf and then the rest of the Fellowship, that's where you meet the last 3 at the Council of Elrond. They build on each other all one at a time. Each Fellowship member gets their own. In one scene, you set up this each of them, and so you love all of them because of it. So if you're writing a story and you're trying to figure out how to have multiple main characters, set up one, then set up another one, just set them all up through each other so that they're connected in a way. And now we'll talk about the two towers and how in the two towers, after all the fellowship splits up, how you can love each of these storylines instead of just being like, can you move back to Frodo and Sam? Or can you move back to Merry? Or can you move back to Aragorn? Like, you have each of these three groups on their own separate missions, and you want to follow each of them because of how perfectly you set them up. So anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. If you have any more questions or thoughts, comment them down below. This has been the Movie Net Review. Peter Wary, signing off. Lord, thank you for your